Bon matin tout le monde, bienvenue au Théâtre national de la presse pour cette conférence avec l'Institut canadien de la citoyenneté. Good morning everybody, welcome to this press conference in the National Press Theatre. We have today with us the Canadian Institute of Citizenship. Go ahead guys, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm going to try and make sure that my things are all here together. Good morning, bonjour. My name is Daniel Bernhardt. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Institute for Canadian Citizenship. I'm pleased to be here this morning with Dr. Catherine Dendler from the Conference Board of Canada. And we are here to talk about a new research report which we are releasing this morning, right now, which is called the Leaky Bucket. And it's the first study of Canada's retention rate of immigrants to the country. We talk so much about immigrants who come to the country and how many come to the country and how well they're doing, but as we await the Minister of Immigration's presentation of the immigration levels for the coming years, we believe that too little attention has been paid to the number of immigrants who leave the country. Coming to Canada is not a one-way door. And if people are coming but not staying here, then that has many implications for our shared future and for our shared success. This report, which we will talk about further in detail, I'm happy to take your questions on, has three principal findings. First, we found that the rate of onward migration, which is the term that's used of people who come and then leave again, has been steadily and slowly and silently increasing for years, decades even, seemingly without notice. Second, there has been a severe spike in the rate of onward migration in recent years, with the levels in 2017 and 2019, which are the most recent years for which we have data, spiking by 31% over the historical average. And we can only imagine, because there's a delay in the data, that the people who are leaving now, we will only see this in a couple of years' time, that these numbers are even higher. This is a real wake-up call for Canada, that many immigrants are coming and saying thanks but no thanks. Finally, there's hope, which is that this data shows there's a critical period in the early years after arrival, years 3 to 7 in particular, where the risk of leaving is highest. And so early interventions to ensure that immigrants have positive experiences in Canada in those critical years can be very, very valuable for the country. Some of those interventions, like the ones that our organization delivers, for example, we have a program called the Canoe Access Pass, which gives right now almost 250,000 newcomers to Canada free access to the very best culture and nature attractions across the country, discounts with Air Canada via rail. This is an immersive experience to feel a sense of belonging so that people love it here and stay and become citizens and contribute to our shared success for generations. This report, of course, like all reports that are the first of their kind, opens many doors and poses many questions which are still to be researched. Who is leaving specifically? Where are they going? Are they going back to their country of origin? Are they going to a third country like the United States? We don't yet know, but we will continue to dig into this. The importance, however, I would like to underline, is that this is not just a report about the quality of life of immigrants to Canada. This is a reflection from the eyes of immigrants on the state of our entire society. And if immigrants are saying that they're not able to succeed here, this is a problem that should concern all of us, because the houses that we need are not going to build themselves. The healthcare staff that we need will not materialize magically out of thin air. If we are able to attract but not retain talent from the rest of the world, then all of our prosperity is threatened. So this is not just a problem for immigrants. This is not something that we should consider just out of our sense of compassion. This is a problem for all of Canada. And our pursuit of immigration and of ensuring immigrant success is the pursuit of our own success. This is a matter of ambition for our future. Je vais le répéter en français et après je vais transférer la parole à ma collègue Catherine Dendler, pour élaborer un peu sur les données et les méthodes du projet. Je m'appelle Daniel Bernard, je suis chef de la direction de l'Institut pour la citoyenneté canadienne. Je suis ici avec ma collègue Dr. Catherine Dendler du Conference Board du Canada. On est ici aujourd'hui pour lancer un nouveau rapport qui s'appelle « Des occasions manquées », qui est la première étude que je connais sur la rétention des immigrants au Canada. Notre recherche a découvert 3 conclusions principales. D'abord, le taux d'émigration parmi les immigrants a augmenté, a grandi doucement, tranquillement, dans une manière silencieuse pendant 4 décennies. Deuxième point, c'est que le taux d'émigration parmi les immigrants a grandi beaucoup dans les années récentes, dont 2017 et 2019, qui sont les dernières années pour lesquelles nous avons des données. Ça, c'est très inquiétant pour l'avenir du Canada et pour la prospérité du Canada, que les gens qui viennent avec leurs talents, les expériences de tous les pays du monde pour essayer de s'établir ici au Canada, décident de quitter le pays et de commencer de nouveau dans un autre pays. Ça, c'est très inquiétant pour le Canada. Troisième conclusion est une conclusion qui nous donne un peu d'espoir. On a trouvé que pendant les premières années après l'arrivée, dont le 3e et le 7e année après l'arrivée, ça, c'est la période où le risque d'émigration est le plus élevé. Donc, les interventions, comme les programmes comme le laissez-passer culturel CANU, offert par l'Institut pour la citoyenneté canadienne, qui donne aux nouveaux arrivants environ 250 000 de nouveaux arrivants actuellement, des expériences culturelles et naturelles gratuites autour du Canada pour donner aux immigrants et à ces familles des expériences transformatives et positives du Canada. Ces programmes, ces interventions, ces innovations peuvent changer de direction de ces données pour aider aux immigrants de tomber en amour avec le Canada, rester ici et contribuer à notre succès partagé. Comme toutes les recherches qui sont les premières étapes, cette recherche pose plusieurs questions qui ne sont pas encore adressées, mais qu'on voudrait adresser avec nos prochaines investigations. Qui sont les immigrants qui quittent le pays? Est-ce qu'ils sont devenus des citoyens canadiens? Est-ce qu'ils retournent à ces pays d'origine ou est-ce qu'ils partent à un tiers pays? Ce sont des questions suivantes qu'on voudrait adresser et investiguer davantage. En conclusion, il faut renforcer un point très important. Ces données, ce rapport, est une réflexion sur notre société entière. Ce n'est pas une question seulement de la qualité de vie des immigrants. Ce n'est pas une question de compassion. C'est une question d'ambition pour le Canada. Parce que si on ne pourrait pas retenir le talent de l'étranger, si on ne peut pas aider aux immigrants de réussir ici, de s'établir ici, ils ne peuvent pas contribuer ici au maximum à notre succès partagé. Donc ça, c'est un projet partagé. Et tous les Canadiens et Canadiennes doivent être concernés, inquiétés par ces données, par ces conclusions, parce que c'est notre avenir partagé qu'on discute aujourd'hui qui est menacé. Et j'aimerais qu'on va jamais discuter de notre prospérité comme quelque chose du passé. Mais les infirmières, les médecins, les personnes qui travaillent en construction, on doit les attirer des autres pays du monde. Si on ne peut pas les retenir, notre avenir est menacé. I'll pass on now to Catherine Denler, who can speak a little bit more about the findings, and then we'll be happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Daniel. Research by the Conference Board of Canada shows that immigration is important to Canada's future prosperity, and immigration is a critical part of Canada's strategy for economic and population growth. At the same time, we're hearing stories from service providers and in newspapers about immigrants who are struggling to build a fulfilling life in Canada. This raises questions about whether immigrants are choosing to stay in Canada. There are only few studies or statistics on the onward migration rate in Canada and how it's changing over time. We at the Conference Board of Canada see the study as an opening for a bigger conversation about retention, changes in that retention rate, and the immigrant experience in Canada more broadly. Measuring the onward migration rate is a challenge because it is not tracked. There is no data that directly captures onward migration. So our research, in order to do this study, our research draws on data from the 2021 Longitudinal Immigration Database, known as the IMDb, which links immigration records and tax records. The study only includes people who were an adult at the time of landing and who filed at least one TIF after landing, meaning this is people who we know did arrive in Canada and have been economically in Canada. We then used the end of fiscal activity, which we define as 2 years without a TIF and no subsequent TIF after that 2-year break, as a proxy for onward migration. People who leave Canada may ultimately return. Some of the trends that we identify, particularly those most recent trends, may look different if they are revisited 5 or 10 years from now. But the bigger point remains, which is that we cannot design policy solutions related to retention if we don't pay attention to the issue. Now that our research has identified that onward migration appears to be on the rise, it's important to dig in further to find out who is leaving and why. Thank you.
All right, we can now start the question and answer period. We're going to do one question, one follow-up, and we'll start with the people in the room. Do we have any questions on this side? Yes, Raji Bujikanyan from CBC.
Yes, hi, thank you for that. I'm wondering, what do you think your research suggests the government should do in terms of its overall immigration levels plan, which it is tabling tomorrow? Typically, we've seen an increase from year to year. Do you think the fact that people are leaving Canada, as your research suggests, says that shouldn't happen, or they should revise it some other way?
I don't think that it's a question of too many or too few. I think it's a question of what are we doing to ensure that people are able to succeed, because we know that when immigrants succeed, they do so by helping Canada succeed, by filling vital roles in the economy and in our society. So I think the bigger question is looking at what happens after people arrive. And in that area, there remains many opportunities for improvement. For example, the Department of Immigration currently has 0 people who are responsible for retention as a portfolio. It's not something that we've even begun to contemplate the possibility of people leaving the country. The fact that a relatively small charity like ours is among the first to actually look at these questions, that we couldn't find this from the government directly, shows that we're not even looking at this question. So I think there are lots of people coming. The need in the labor market is apparent. There's all sorts of questions about selection and labor market fit and which skills and all that kind of stuff. But after that, we need to make sure that people are able to establish themselves. And if we don't, then all the money we spend on settlement services, on language classes, et cetera, can be wasted to the detriment of all Canadians.
And just as a follow-up, I know you said it's difficult to draw conclusions based on the little data, but do you have any sense at all of who it is that's leaving and which provinces or territories they're particularly leaving from?
We don't happen to have that data. What we hear, though, about why people are leaving are, I would say, 2 sets of challenges. One set of challenges are particular to immigrants by virtue of being immigrants, things like credential recognition, inability to have their professional experience recognized or to find employment that's commensurate with their skills and experience. This is, of course, an incredible mark of shame on Canada that we cannot even consider the possibility that there are people from other parts of the world who know how to do things better than we do. Like build houses faster or cheaper, like provide health care of equal quality for less price. So this is a mark of great hubris on our part, and I think people feel that for sure. The other set of challenges, of course, that immigrants feel are the same challenges that everybody feels, because immigrants live in the same society as the rest of us. And so issues like housing affordability, health care, etc., can add up. But in many cases, the economies in the countries where immigrants are coming from are booming. When my parents came to Canada, they came with very little English skills, with almost no money. They were very young. They had very few expectations. They would never be allowed into Canada today. The people that we're selecting have incredible skills. Many are homeowners in the country of origin. They had domestic help in countries where that was affordable. And so they're here to give it a try, but they're not here because they have to be. And if Canada can't deliver for them, if we don't realize that we are in a competition with the rest of the world for this incredibly valuable talent, we'll lose it.
Thank you, Rafi. Next person, Sandrine Vieira, Le Devoir.
Oui, bonjour, merci pour votre temps. Ça ressemble un peu à la question de mon collègue, mais peut-être en français. J'aimerais savoir s'il y a des conclusions dans votre rapport concernant la réponse du gouvernement pour les prochaines cibles d'immigration. On va en savoir plus demain. Est-ce qu'il y a quelconque donnée sur, par exemple, une potentielle baisse des cibles? Est-ce que ça aurait un effet sur la rétention? Bref, est-ce qu'il y a des conclusions par rapport à ça?
J'espère que on va discuter plus qu'un grand chiffre, un grand montant. C'est une question de qu'est-ce qui se passe après l'arrivée. Donc, la question de niveau d'immigrants est une question de sélection. Mais après ça, il y a des questions de retention. Et c'est ça qu'on voudrait renforcer, l'importance de penser sur la retention et de travailler sur la retention. Il y a actuellement 0 personne au ministère de l'Immigration responsable pour l'enjeu de retention, de retenir les immigrants. Donc, ça, c'est quelque chose on n'a pas pensé que c'était possible. il n'y a pas de division pour ça. Donc, qui sont les immigrants, c'est très important. Quelles sont les expériences qu'on a besoin? Ça, c'est autre chose. Mais après qu'ils arrivent, s'ils ne réussissent pas, tous les investissements dans francisation, classe de français, aide d'emploi, tout ça devient un gaspillage si les personnes quittent le pays. Donc, il y a des niveaux d'entrée, mais après, niveau de rétention, c'est un élément très important qui était manqué jusqu'à maintenant.
Et est-ce qu'il y a des données ou des conclusions par rapport à la rétention des immigrants, spécifiquement au Québec, dans votre rapport?
Pas encore. Pas encore. On utilise les grandes données d'impôts personnels. Ça, c'est pan-canadien pour toutes les provinces. Mais on voudrait ramasser des données plus détaillées pour investiguer ces questions, mais aussi s'il y a des différences entre les personnes qui ont déjà devenu citoyennes canadiennes et les personnes qui ne sont pas, etc. Donc, ce sont des questions pour les prochaines étapes.
Merci Sandrine. Prochaine personne, Valérie de Radio-Canada.
Bonjour. Un peu dans cette trame-là, vous n'avez pas de données sur le Québec. Est-ce qu'il y a des données sur le français, sur l'immigration francophone? Est-ce que c'est plus difficile, par exemple, de retenir un immigrant francophone qu'un immigrant anglophone?
Nos données actuelles qu'on présente aujourd'hui ne font pas de distinction entre la langue des immigrants qui restent ou ceux qui partent. Mais ce qu'on renforce avec ce rapport, c'est l'importance de rétention. Donc, s'il y a des gens qui viennent, qui ne restent pas pour raison d'intégration de langue, culturelle, autre chose, ça, c'est un gaspillage et une perte pour toute la population de la région Provence où cet immigrant pourrait rester, mais qui ne restait pas. Donc, ça souligne l'importance d'intégration, mais aussi de l'accueil, et un accueil complet, pas seulement des services, mais les services comme notre laissez-passer culturel qu'à nous, qui donne un accueil complet aux familles, qui dit aux immigrants, vous pouvez être comme nous, comme ça. Il y a ces expériences culturelles, théâtre, cabane à sucre, n'importe quoi. Vous pouvez profiter de ces choses pour apprendre comment s'impliquer dans la culture. C'est important de faire cette distinction parce qu'on parle trop, je crois, des obligations des immigrants de faire ça et ça et ça et ça, mais on ne parle pas assez, à mon avis, de l'importance de convaincre, de persuader peut-être des personnes de s'intégrer plus dans la culture. Mais s'ils partent, tout le monde perd. Et ça, c'est ce qu'on inquiète.
Et quand vous dites qu'il faudrait comprendre les raisons pour lesquelles ces gens-là quittent le pays, est-ce que c'est donc de dire que le gouvernement devrait prendre une pause dans ses cibles d'immigration, le temps de comprendre, justement, le temps de s'équiper pour accueillir mieux? Est-ce que vous conseilleriez, par exemple, au gouvernement de ne pas hausser ces cibles et de peut-être les stabiliser pour l'avenir?
Pour moi, c'est une question secteur par secteur de l'économie, pas un grand chiffre. Malheureusement, les besoins ne s'arrêtent pas. Ils ne vont pas prendre une pause. Les besoins de maisons qu'on n'a pas construites, les besoins des patients qui ne reçoivent pas leurs soins médicaux parce qu'il n'y a pas assez de médecins, infirmières, techniciens, autres personnes. Donc, les besoins ne prennent pas une pause. Donc, j'encourage au gouvernement de parler des objectifs, des bouts politiques. Par exemple, on voudrait que 90% des Canadiens et Canadiennes auront accès à un médecin par 2030, par exemple. Et si nous avons un certain numéro d'étudiants ici, la différence vont venir par immigration, par exemple. Donc, secteur par secteur, besoin par besoin. Mais la nécessité ne prend pas une pause. Donc, je ne prends pas que le gouvernement ne peut pas poser aussi.
Merci Valérie. We can now head over to our online reporters, starting with Nicholas Kyung from the Toronto Star.
Hi, good morning, Daniel and Catherine. Thank you so much for this important research on a very an overlooked aspect of the immigration policy. In your report, it says that, on average, 0.9% of people who were granted permanent residence in or after 1982 leave Canada each year. And then you have like the total number of departures adds up over time, and it would lead to an attrition of 20% or more of an arrival cohort over 25 years. Can you explain how the 0.9% in the first year onward migration rate would translate to 20% over a 25-year time span? And how it adds up to, I think you early in your presentation, Daniel, you referred to the rate actually spiked in 2017 and 2019 to 31%. Like, I just wonder whether you can, help us understand how the annual 0.9% for the first year departure would end up over time becoming 20% accumulatively.
Thanks very much for the question. The 0.9% is an average, a weighted average across multiple cohorts and across multiple years. So some of the people in that 0.9% are in year 1, some of them are in year 5, some of them are in their 15th year living in Canada. So that really is kind of an aggregate number to try to understand what's happening in the kind of overall picture. But each cohort is unique in terms of, when that number peaks and when it kind of goes lower. What we found is that on average, the peak is between about 3 and 7 years. Those are the years when the most people are leaving, and that's when you average across cohorts. But of course, you're going to see differences between cohorts. So for example, in the 1989 cohort, they reached 20% attrition by the 25-year mark. That level of attrition, that 20% attrition, that 1 in 5 people leaving, was reached at the 20-year mark for the people who entered in 1999. So it does vary across cohorts.
I would just add to that for people like me who aren't so smart with big and small and precise numbers, that the findings of the report are very clear that no matter what the rate of attrition for immigrants has been historically, it's speeding up. These graphs that are at the bottom of the report to some extent resemble the graphs we've seen about climate change, where we make a prediction and the reality far exceeds the predicted amount. And so in just about any cohort that we look at, the number of people leaving in recent years has been greater than the number that we would expect to leave, and that rate continues to accelerate.
And sorry, I'm also a math idiot myself. I just wonder, because, I understand, what Catherine was saying, about, averaging the aggregate numbers. But at the same time, every year we also have new immigrants arriving. So why would the ratio actually, over a time span would go up, but rather not being stabilized at the same rate around 1%? If you know what my question is.
I think think that I understand the question, so let me try to answer, and you can ask again if I haven't
Please.
gotten to what it is that you're trying to get at. The reason that we expressed in the report those numbers in terms of percentages is because the cohort size really varies from year to year. We all know this, we have more immigrants coming in 2022 than in 2017 than in 2012. So we didn't find that it was meaningful to look at the absolute number or to compare the absolute number across cohorts, but rather to compare the rate of attrition across cohorts. So not only do we see that the rate of attrition is going up, but then that absolute number is going up much more.
Am I allowed a follow-up question?
Sure, Nicholas, we have time.
Okay, thank you. So I guess, again, forgive my limited knowledge in math. I actually studied arts, but I'm just curious. I guess my question is like, if the ratio is about, I understand the averaging part, but if the ratio is always around 1% each year, and every year, we sometimes we have 300,000 newcomers coming. Sometimes it's 250, and last year's so far 2023 is expected 485,000. But why would the ratio actually vary when the overall pie, the cumulative number of immigrants, permanent residents, also go up proportionally? Sometimes more, sometimes less, but it constantly goes up, right?
Yeah, so let me take a crack at getting to the core of your question. We provided the 0.9% even to provide a baseline so that we have a sense of, like, in general, what is happening. But that number is truly an average. It's an average across years, and it's an average across cohorts. So it really is just a baseline number. So if you want to know more about what's happening, what you have to do is dig in for a particular cohort, like a group of people who arrived in a particular year, and then to see, what's happening for that cohort year on year. And I think one of the points we're trying to make here is that this attrition, it really accumulates. So 0.9% doesn't look like a lot, but over time, it can mean something like, for example, in 2019, the spike that we're talking about, 67,000 immigrants left Canada. And it kind of happened unnoticed. And I think it's the unnoticed part that we're trying to bring out, which is it's important to know what's going on. And once we know what's going on, we can start to talk about why.
Thank you, Catherine. I think you answered my question. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Nicholas. Now heading on over to Palak Mangat from the Parliament today.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Thanks for taking our questions. Maybe not in this report, but generally based on your line of work, are there any measures or programs, maybe over the last couple of years that you think may be contributing to this pattern of kind of Canada shedding immigrants? I'll give you an example. I think this summer, the feds had rolled out an open work permit program for H-1B US visa holders. And I remember at the time, there was some concern from people who said that, this could be used as kind of a safety measure for people who, for example, apply for a Canadian permit and kind of keep it in their pocket as a backup, but may not actually make it to Canada. That was a temporary move, but that's just an example of maybe a measure that, I just wanted to see if you have any measures that you are flagging in your work.
I want to follow up on something that your colleague from Radio-Canada raised just earlier, which I said probably poorly in French, and I'll try and say now a little bit more clearly in English. It's important that we don't pin this entirely on immigrants themselves and their lack of commitment to the country and all the things that they have not done or not done enough of. The fact that people have options is just that, it's a fact. And the question is now whether Canada will deliver the superior experience that will persuade people that this is where they want to stay, that this is where they want to make a home for themselves and their families. And ultimately that means that this is where they will contribute their efforts and talents towards. Citizenship is more than just a legal status. It's a state of mind. It's the idea that this is my place and these are my people. And so instead of Canada having this old-fashioned view that immigrants all come from these destitute places and horrible circumstances, and we provide this, peaceful oasis, and they should be grateful to be here, and that's that. We need to shift from this compassion-oriented view of immigration to an ambition-oriented view of immigration, where we get competitive, where we recognize that people have other options, including their country of origin, but also third countries, countries like Australia, that are now in many measures doing better for new immigrants in the early years after arrival than Canada is. That there are countries like Germany, for example, which are starting to figure out that they need economic immigrants to come, and they're starting to slowly make changes. The world is catching up. And so is Canada providing that exceptional experience, that unbeatable, unleavable experience that takes the talent from the rest of the world and keeps it here? Or not? That's the question. It's not just about who we let in and then saying, oh, well, they're flighty or they're not sufficiently committed. What are we doing to make sure that the decision to come to Canada is a sticky one? That's within our control.
And sorry, just as a follow-up, you did flag it earlier that this should be a wake-up call for the government, that early intervention needs to be, I guess, beefed up. You flagged years 3 or 7, I believe. So what issues are you seeing that maybe prop up within that time frame, and what kind of measures do you mean by early intervention that are required?
Yeah, it's years 3 to 7. So what the data seem to suggest is that people come and they give it a shot for a little bit. They try it out. And then over a period of, 3, 4, 5 years, they reevaluate as to whether or not this was the right move. As people often reevaluate whether they're in the right job or, whether they want to move to a new neighborhood. These things come in cycles. And so it seems like there's that first cycle, which takes 3 to 7 years, but also the decision to leave can take some time. So I would say probably in the first 5 years or so, most people will make up their mind. And what are we doing to make sure that they feel that this is a place where they want to stay, that they made the right decision? So economic success obviously is a huge thing. And of course we have needs. We have huge needs which are unmet. So there are opportunities there for sure. But also making sure that your kids are in a good place, that you have fun on the weekends, that you have friends in your neighborhood, that you have people who you share interests with and other social activities that you can engage in. All the things that make life worth living for everybody. Are those things in place? And if they are, I think the probability of retention is higher, which means that those needs in the labor force that we're talking about, and health and construction and all of these areas, will not, come back. That the roles will stay filled. I think that's what we're talking about, is making sure that Canada, for all of Canada's benefit, can provide a positive experience. And it's nothing special. There's no secret. It's all the stuff that makes life worth living for everybody.
Thank you, Palak. Next person, Namul Karim from the Financial Post. Naimul, if you could just unmute yourself, thank you.
Yeah, hi. I was just wondering, thank you for the percentages, but could you perhaps elaborate a bit on the whole numbers, especially in 2017 and 2019, since the report says that there was a spike, a severe spike in those years?
Sure, I can elaborate a little bit for you. The one thing that I would caution to start is that as we get into the later years, we're including more cohorts. So that's why we've really focused on the percentages in the report, because it's that percentage spike, that rate of leaving is the thing that I do want to emphasize. But I do have just a couple of numbers to help make it a little bit more tangible. As I had referenced to your colleague earlier, in 2019, we have flagged 67,000 people as having left Canada. And the number for 2017, and again, I want to emphasize there's fewer people included because in the 2017 year, those 2018 and 2019 immigrants haven't come yet. But in 2017, that number is nearly 60,000.
Donc, pour le répéter en français, on parle des grands montants de personnes qui quittent le pays. En 2017, on parle environ de 60 000 personnes, immigrants qui ont décidé de quitter le Canada. En 2019, on parle de 67 000 de personnes qui ont quitté le Canada. Ça, sont des grands chiffres de personnes qui ont décidé que c'est impossible ou c'est pas désiré de continuer au Canada. C'est très inquiétant pour tout le monde.
Thank you. If you don't have any...
I have a follow-up.
Sorry, you go ahead.
Yeah, just wondering, do you have data on, in terms of cohort, in the last few years, which cohort did you find leave the most? Say in the last 5 years. By that I mean between 2014 to 2017 or 2012 to 2017. Which cohort did you see leave the most? Is that clear?
Thanks for the question. It's something that I don't have all of the data for each of the cohorts in front of me right now. So it's something that we could connect with you later to provide more detail and more information. One thing that I would emphasize is that each cohort has been in Canada for a different length of time. So it's about, which cohorts are we including and at the what year mark is it that we're looking at. So it's a great deal of data to keep in the head. So I would have to provide it to you later. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Merci tout le monde de votre présence. That concludes today's press conference. Have a good day.
Thank you.